And this is Power 102 Digital Friday. On a Friday, the Fathers Association or the Single Fathers Association, they host Hard Talk. I hear on the set with me, Shervon Lewis, and he has a very special guest. I'll allow Shervon to introduce his guest. Good afternoon, Shervon and Dr. Ward.
Good afternoon, Mac. Good afternoon, Dr. Ward. And good afternoon, Trinidad and Tobago. It's always a pleasure having you all here with us on a Friday. And as always, Mac, thank you so very much to you and the Power 102 team for creating this very important space for men. Not forgetting our international and regional listeners, good afternoon to you as well. And so we have a lot of great things happening in the coming days. I should say it so soon. But before I get into some of those things, let me introduce Dr. Joan Bob Ward. Dr. Ward has been a friend, and as I told her, I think yesterday or the day before, family to the Fathers Association for many, many years. And so I would give her the opportunity to introduce herself and the Hope and Action Network, and then we could kick into the discussion today. Dr. Ward?
Unmute your microphone, please.
You're still muted, Dr. Ward.
Yes.
Look to the bottom of the video screen.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Good evening,
Yes.
Shervon. Good evening, host.
Yes.
I am Dr. Joan Bob Ward, and it is a pleasure to be here with you, sharing this platform with the Fathers Association of Trinidad and Tobago. I am the president of Hope and Action Network, and this is an NGO that was formed in 2020, and our vision is a better society through empowerment. So we seek through our weekly programs to empower our society so that we can be a better society.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ward. So, folks, in the last couple of days, Dr. Ward, Rondell, and myself and others have been busy in meetings and in planning sessions because we have been advised, firstly, I would say, by the Office of the Prime Minister, and we would like to say thank you very much to the Prime Minister, his team, the permanent secretaries there, the minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, Ayanna Webster Roy, because we've been invited to host jointly with the Office of the Prime Minister an International Men's Day retreat. And this is exciting news, I would say, for all men across Trinidad and Tobago and the region, because we also expect, Dr. Ward, some regional partners, right? Some regional representatives of government to be present at this retreat, where we can delve into some very critical issues that impact men, and not just have a talk shop, as we were saying, but to come up with some serious actionable items for the state and all of us involved to bring about a change in the way we offer services to men on so many different levels, right? In the way we treat men, in the way we perceive men, in the way we pull men up and get them onto a solid footing, which it could only benefit our society. Now, this conference was held in Grenada last year, right? Dr. Ward, you would have attended the conference in Grenada, correct?
No, I was on the planning team, and just as the Grenada government was about to purchase my ticket, I lost a daughter. So I was unable to attend. So tomorrow marks 1 year since I lost her.
I am very sorry to hear, Dr. Ward, and please accept our condolences coming up to this very sad milestone in your family's life. So, but Dr. Ward, being a part of the planning committee last year, you would have been intimate with the details of what this conference in Grenada was meant to be, and how it would have targeted the targeted areas for men. You want to share a bit on that?
Yes, I do. It was an exciting journey last year. In fact, we started planning just a couple months before the event. And I was thrilled because for the first time, we would have been having a regional conference on International Men's Day. And we know traditionally Women's Days are featured, Women's Days are upheld. And we found that there was no day really dedicated truly to men. And we have to thank Dr. Tilak Singh for, as he's the founder of International Men's Day. And so we sat as a team, as a regional team, and we planned to focus on men's well-being, men's health, men in sports. We wanted to feature men who were excelling as all-rounders. And so there was that very exciting awards ceremony where men were celebrated. Also, the conference last year focused on the imbalance between the way men were treated and the way women were treated. And of course, last year's conference did not succeed in really eradicating the imbalance. So here we are again. We're going to be focusing on some of those very deep issues. And as a member, as the president of Hope and Action Network, our programs focus on men and they focus on women. And we adopt a very balanced approach because we recognize the way men are treated and we are saying we're not satisfied with that. We're not satisfied. And so the Grenada conference last year was really the kick-off. And this retreat this year is a continuation, and hopefully we will achieve what we are hoping to achieve in terms of balance and fair treatment for men and really dealing with men's issues.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Ward. So, folks, I had also had the opportunity to look at some of the aspects of the some of the sessions in the Grenada International Men's Day Conference last year. And I would tell you I was touched by the conversations. I learned so much from just some of the sessions that were streamed live that I was able to tune into. One of them that always stands out to me was men and health, physical health, right? And David, I don't know about you, but I am not so good in taking care of my physical health. I don't know how you go about it, David. And I know a lot of men as well. We neglect, Dr. Ward, our physical health many times. You have this popular thing in Trinidad where we say it's gas, right? Mm-hmm. Everything is gas. We write it off as gas or some other kind of something else, right? Mm-hmm. And we neglect our health. And there was a doctor there who was explaining why men neglect their health. And if we want to change that, what do we need to do? And he was pointing out that after you receive your immunizations as a child, a man is not required, unless he's ill, to go back to a doctor until he's 40 years old, right? When they tell you to start to come for prostate exams and so on. And he said, so because of that, he has no sensitivity towards health checkups and so on, as opposed to a female doctor would, where after immunization, they say when you begin seeing your period, you need to see a doctor. When you become sexually active, you need to see a doctor. Your pap smears and all of the different things that you have to follow up with in the years of your life growing up. Whereas men, it's from birth, and after birth, then it's 40, right? Or early stages of their life, probably 3 years old or so, until 40. Yeah. And so that really hit me. I was like, you know what, Dr. Wood, I never would have contemplated that because of that upbringing and that culturing, if we can put it like that, I never understood that is why most of us, because you always hear people say it, right? You know, why all the men don't take care of themselves? Why all the men don't take that pain seriously? Why you don't do this? It's because of our culture. And culture impacts, that is medical health we were talking about, but Dr. What culture impacts so many other things.
Yes, and I want to stay with that a little bit, Shervon. Mm-hmm. Yes, I strongly agree with the position that the doctor put forth last year. I want to add something else to that that has to do with the upbringing of men. You know, we believe that men are not supposed to display any sign of weakness. And so if a man says that he has a headache, we will brush it off as something very simple. And as women, sometimes we say, well, you know, we bear more pain than that. If you experience childbirth, what would you think? So we constantly silence men with respect to their medical conditions. And it's only when it becomes extremely serious that we think that they should do something about it. But by that time, the damage has already been done. So we really have to look at culture. We have to look at the way we bring up our sons, the way we talk to our young men, and the dumbing down of their emotions and feelings. Because it has an impact. It has an impact, a negative impact.
Yeah, definitely. I have to agree with that, Dr. Wood. Definitely, definitely. And Dr. Wood, how do you see, again, from your field of expertise, how have you seen culture impact men in different areas of life?
Okay, it impacts every area of their lives, every area. It is popular in our culture to favor women, to think that anything that happens to a woman is important and anything that happens to a man can be brushed aside. And so we continue to push men in a corner because of our culture. And so we see we are reaping some benefits or rewards that are not so pleasant. When we look at the rate of male suicide, and this is a worldwide phenomenon, but when we look at what's happening in our own Trinidad and Tobago, we have trained men to be silent. We have trained them to stifle themselves. And so it's coming out. It's coming out in different ways, negative impacts. In terms of education, and I'm going there, and I'm not separating it from culture, we find that most of the schools are staffed by women. When we look at the police service now, and when we look at Tobago and the police stations in Tobago, we recognize that most of the senior officers are women. When we look at the medical profession now, the students going into Mount Hope, most, I think it's about 80%, are women. And so women seem to be moving ahead. And the reason for this is that in schools, the students are taught by women, and boys are expected to sit in a classroom and operate as a girl. And when the truth is, their brains are wired differently. Their response time when an instruction is given is different, and it's not because they are stubborn or hardened, as we like to say, but it is because their hearing process is a little slower. And I use the word slow in inverted commas. It doesn't mean that anything is wrong with them. But remember, I said they're wired differently. So the sound takes a little longer to go to the brain, so they will respond differently. Boys like to manipulate objects, try things out. They don't want to sit in a classroom all day and read a book. But our culture is that you must be quiet, you must sit, and you must do your work. You must read everything that I give you to read, and so on. So the whole culture is working against men. And then we turn around and we criticize men.
Oh, very, very, very salient points, Dr. Ward. Very salient points. And I want the listenership to know that these are some of the topics we will be delving into over that course of the conference, right? And let me just give you some of let me give you some of the schedule. Let me give you the schedule. So we would like to begin this conference on the 17th of November, which is next week Sunday, God Spare Life, right? And we want to begin the conference with a match. The route and the times for the match will be shared later on, right? But the purpose of the match is one, to come together as a community, men and women. We always say that we need the support of women. You all heard me say at the top of the program that Dr. Ward and her team have been great supporters of the Fathers Association, and there are many other women who are great, who've supported us along the way. We need, right? We can't make this change with men alone, right? Because the way God made us, He made us male and female together, right? He said at the beginning, it was not good for man to be alone, and He created woman for man and woman to be together on this earth. And so we have to support each other through the unique circumstances that we face in life. So we are calling on you all to join us for that march on the 17th of November. It will be in the Port of Spain area, but as I said, more details will be shared. We're coming together. We'll be marching through key strategic points in the city that have impacted, that will, we believe, that have impacted, let me put it that way, but have the power now to positively change the trajectory with where men go in our society, right? On the 18th of November, which is the second day of that retreat, we intend to have a program called Boys to Men, a Youth Empowerment Day. And we would be sending out letters. The Office of the Prime Minister will be sending out letters to schools in the Port of Spain, and environs. We will also be inviting CCC, Milat, Shervon, the Police Youth Club, the Judiciary, right, the Children's Court specifically on that day, with the hope of bringing them together and hear from very key and influential speakers in our time to discuss some pointed topics, such as the well-balanced man, right? Am I reading this right, Dr. Ward? Yes, the well-balanced man, financial literacy and non-traditional entrepreneurial journey, right? We're looking at business and finance, and social influences, because we know that social media has become such a potent influence, as well as the music culture, Dr. Ward, has really crept into homes and communities across the region, because we see regional leaders starting to stand up now and say, no, we don't want these Trinidad artists in our island.
Yes.
Right? Because they're looking at the influence it is having on the youth in their island. And so we'll be looking at some of those topics on the Youth Day, Dr. Ward. And I tell you, I'm excited about the conversations we'll be having on that day with the youths, to hear their perspective as well, not just adults. We don't want this to be a session where adults just sit down talking down to youths and talking at them, but we want to hear the youth perspective as well on the challenges they are facing. And this is young men and boys, the challenges they are facing as they navigate life's journey. Dr. Ward?
Shervon, I am excited about Monday, the 18th of November, because this is a day when we are going to be empowering young men. And very often when I hear people criticize young men, criticize young people, say young people don't know this and they don't know that, when we hear them saying that young people, they listen to the wrong things and they're doing the wrong things, I often ask, what have we taught them? Did we take the time to help them? And Monday, 18th November is one such day when these boys are going to be empowered. Shervon, one night earlier this year on my Wednesday night program, we had a police officer delivering on violent messages in songs. We say that the songs are violent, they're violent undertones, they're violent messages. But have we really drawn it to their attention? And I have to congratulate the Fathers Association for recognizing that this is one area where we need to speak out to our young people. And we need to continue the message even after November 18th. This is a message, and all the messages that will be sounded during this retreat, they need to continue. They need to be echoed throughout the year until next year, this time, when International Men's Day will be celebrated in another country, because this is another thing, Shervon. It's not going to end here. It's going to continue from territory to territory until we have to start all over again. Yes, so wonderful sessions on that day, wonderful conversations on that day. And we encourage people to log in, tune in. Of course, there will be the facility so people could log in virtually and listen to what's taking place.
Yes, we definitely will be streaming live for those who may not be able to make it in person. We know these venues have limited capacities, and so we'll be streaming live, and we really look forward to the participation of some of the schools and the educational institutions that we know are geared towards at-risk youth, right? Such as the CCC and the MILAT and these schools. So we definitely look forward to that. You're right. That conversation about music in this time, Dr. Ward, is a huge conversation. And while I acknowledge as a parent my concern with the type of music that is out there now, it is not to say that I wasn't that age at one time, and there were music that my parents would have deemed inappropriate that I may have been drawn to, right? And so the key is, how do we bridge that gap with our young people? How do we have those conversations, as you said, without dumbing them down and looking down on them, so that we can help them to appreciate the value in life, the value in positivity, the value and respect for each other, the value and respect for male and female, right? As opposed to what is purported in those lyrics at times. You're going to say something, Dr.
Yes, Shervon, yes. The conversation about music is another thing that excites me, because I did some research on music and academic performance. So we're saying to the young people, music is good. Music has a positive impact on academic performance. However, there are some types of music that have negative effects on behavior. So when we're about to have that conversation with those young people, it's important for them to know that we are not bashing music. Music can enhance their performance in mathematics, in language, in science, in the whole interactions with people, interpersonal relationships. It is, an all-round asset to academic performance. And there are some schools in some countries where students are expected to participate in music, all students. There are some schools in some countries where they have the desktop pianos, the instruments, because of that positive connection it has with academic performance. However, there are some types of music, heavy metal rap, that has a negative impact on behavior. And of course, lyrics. Lyrics are important. Lyrics must be positive. We can't be telling people to kill each other and shoot each other, and we can't disrespect women in lyrics and so on. So if we want a better society, which Hope and Action Network seeks to create or impact, and which Fathers Association seeks to influence as well, and the other NGOs, then we have to zero in on what might be acting against us having a better society. And of course, the negative lyrics in some of those songs must go. We cannot encourage that. We want good young men. We want good boys. We say we want them. Then let's do something about the music.
Definitely agree with you 100% there, Dr. Ward. And just remind our listeners of the numbers to tune in to engage the program. If you want to call in, Biznat, I saw your message. Good afternoon, brother, and thanks for joining us as always. And if you want to call in, the numbers are 222-8255 if you're calling locally from Trinidad and Tobago. If you're calling from the US or Canada, we have a toll-free number, 866-525-1099. And on WhatsApp, if you want to message us via WhatsApp, it's 868-318-1021. And for those of you just joining us, what we are going through right now, the agenda for the upcoming International Men's Day retreat that is going to be held right here in Trinidad and Tobago. And we give thanks to the Office of the Prime Minister earlier today, and the Prime Minister himself, the Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, the Permanent Secretaries, the entire team that is working with us in conjunction to put on this event starting next week Sunday, God Spare Life. Next week Sunday being the 17th of November. All right. So it's really an exciting time for men and boys, an exciting time for fathers and mothers, women and girls in this nation, right? Because if we build strong men, right, and we build strong women, we'll have strong families. It can't be one-sided. Okay, so we want to build strong women in our society, but if we don't build strong men, then our society will implode, will collapse on itself. We need strong men and strong women working together to build our society. So we were saying, for those again just joining in, the first day it's a march on Sunday, next week Sunday, God's willing. We have a march in the Port of Spain area where we come together, where we celebrate with men and fathers, and we're calling on everyone to be present, men and women, right? The details of the time and location of the march will be shared later on. The second day, sorry, go ahead, Dr.
Yes,
Ward.
you invited women, but there was one thing that we need to mention. If a woman is attending the march, she must bring along a man.
Yes.
So women, encourage your sons,
bring
your husband, your partner, your male relatives to come along with you.
Yes, bring them out. Yep. So, and the next day, which is the Monday, the 18th, it's a youth empowerment day. And we're inviting schools in the Port of Spain area. We are inviting the institution that target at-risk youth, and we're going to have some really interactive panels, right? We're going to discuss ICT. We're going to discuss music and culture. We have some artists who will be dropping in on the day, right? Some of the influencers who will be dropping in on the day as well. So we look forward to having a really positive time with the young men on that day. And then the other day, which would be the 19th, Tuesday the 19th, which is International Men's Day, we're going to be delving into the heavier topics. And I know, Dr. Ward, I want to say this up front. I know there are agencies. I mean, Rondell and I had a good laugh earlier this week. We attended a meeting, and let me say hello to the folks at the where is it? The Ministry of Social Development, National Family Services. Let me say hello to the folks there. And you know, we really enjoyed that chat we had with you all earlier this week. I believe it was earlier this week. Time passes so quickly. But one of the things they said to us that had us laughing, they said, you all are so abrasive, you know, you come across as opposing everything that is done, and you know, and people are afraid of you. And we had a laugh at it because as I explained to them after, we both did, if you listen to the things that we say, you would see that we are not, as some associations are doing, Dr. Ward, fighting for women's rights for women to be empowered, but empowered at the risk of stepping on the heads of men. We are saying, let us support men and women. And there are things that are unique to women, and they deserve all the support in those areas. And there are things that are unique to men, and they deserve all the support in those areas. And if we invest in both, we will have a better society.
Indeed. Shervon, I remember we did 2 sessions. We intended to do one, When Men Hurt. And after doing that session, we had to do a part 2, When Men Hurt. And then we did a part 3, Men, We Heard You. Because somehow the society believes that men don't hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow we believe that men are made of this brick, concrete, whatever it might be. and we ignore their feelings. We ignore their emotions. In fact, we teach them that they should not show their emotions. And so much is done to them. And when we look at well, we on social media and we see, we read, we listen. When something happens to a woman, the whole society comes out in support.
Yes.
If it happens to a man, we look at it, experience some short period of sympathy. I'm not even sure if we get to the point of empathy, and then we forget about it. Men have feelings, men hurt, and the society needs to recognize this, and we need to do something about it. And I wanted to ask, you see the people on social media, we could start now to change this narrative.
Definitely.
Just pull back, step back, and recognize that a man is a human being. A man is a human being. He has feelings. He has the same feelings as a woman would have. He would express it in a different way, but he has feelings. And so we need to ensure that we have that balance and not just push the women's issues at the expense of the men's issues. It must not be a surprise when an issue regarding males is raised. It is important, just as important as any other issue. But the society leans towards women and children, and then we leave the men out in the cold, and then we complain. You know, we hear men not good. We hear about male toxicity. I hate that term. I hate it. I think it needs to be removed from our vocabulary. We have created certain situations. We have created it based on our culture, based on tradition, based on education, based on the way we respond to male issues. So, Shervon and Wendell and Rondell and the others who are fighting, yes, you need to fight. And it must not appear to be a weak fight. It must be strong. Your voices must be heard. And do not let anybody intimidate you by letting you feel that you're coming on too strongly. You are not. You are facing the issues head on.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ward, for that endorsement. And I went that route to say we are inviting persons to sit on the panel from the government, from the judiciary. And I know they may say, well, you know what, we're afraid to sit down with these people and come out there and sit on a panel with them to get licks, right? But listen, our goal is to not only identify the issues, but to work with you to develop the solutions. I want to say that again for every stakeholder listening. Our goal is not to come and beat you over your head with issues. We have spoken ad nauseum for years about the issues that plague men in the different sectors and systems in our country. We're not coming to beat you anymore with those issues. We're going to point the issue and we want to discuss solutions. Because we want at the end of this weekend retreat, so to speak, that we have actionable items. And as a society, we can set a finish line, Dr. Ward, and see ourselves progressing towards it at the end of the day. I see Rondell put a message in his chat. He said, thank you to the Office of the Prime Minister as well for making a public statement. That statement is men and boys matter too. Men and boys need support too. Yes, and we endorse that 100%. So we are saying to the panelists, as you receive your invites, don't say, oh gosh, them fellas and them again. No, we are saying come and join with us to have fruitful discussions and come up with sustainable solutions as to how we turn things around for men in this country. Because if we get men on the right track, then I am certain we'll see a better society. So that is on the 19th of November. Again, the venues for these events are being confirmed as we speak. Rondell is heading off to a meeting right now. to address this as well. And so the venues will be confirmed. Those will be communicated shortly. And I know the dates we're calling it's very close, right? Just a week away and a few days. So those venues will be confirmed, and you would be seeing communication flowing from our social media channels, flowing from the Office of the Prime Minister, as we put together this initiative, and we invite all to have that conversation. Now, day 2, which is the 19th, is open to the public, right? There would be a mechanism to register, because again, these auditoriums have limited seating, but we're inviting you to register early. Once we put the link out there, inviting you to attend and lend your voice, right? Lend your experience and bring your testimonies of what you have experienced. But as I said, not for the sake of just griping, but for the sake of developing solutions. So on that day, Dr. Ward, we intend to discuss faulty perceptions of masculinity.
Yeah.
And that is going to address some of the things we spoke about: culture, societal views, or canceling that term you shared there, toxic masculinity, right? I don't know who invented that ridiculous term to brand and denigrate men, as if we haven't been doing that enough, right? Intimate partner violence and false allegations. Just we spoke a little bit about culture earlier. And Dr. Ward, we know that not too long ago, men were not allowed on hospital wards when their spouses or their significant others were with child. And we said, and thankfully that has changed now.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still a long way to go.
There is.
Mm-hmm. We don't have paternity leave legislation in Trinidad and Tobago. And so when we devalue the value fatherhood, Dr. Ward, and we see some men treat it as if it is nothing, we quick to brand them deadbeat, we quick to brand them waste of time, but we have created a culture that says you do not matter.
Yes. Yes, we've taught them that they're not important.
Yeah.
So I often wonder, what is the thinking? When a woman has a newborn, she most likely would have been at home for a month before. And some people choose to take their leave closer to the time of delivery. However, you're allowed to go home, be at home a month before. And then 2 months after this child is born, you're at home with your baby.
Mm-hmm.
When we tell a father that you can get 2 days off, it means that for 60 days almost, or some months have 31 days, this father is likely to be away from the child. And not only is it painful for a father, but what support is there for the new mother?
Yeah.
What support is there for the baby? And look at this Shervon. I remember 3 years ago during COVID, I applied to leave the country because the borders were closed. My daughter was in Los Angeles. Her baby was due. And I flew out of this country not knowing how I will return to be with that mother, my daughter, for 2 months. They need support.
Yep.
So it's also telling the father that the mother doesn't need you. Apart from saying that you don't need to be with your wife, you don't need to be with your newborn, you don't need to bond with your baby. We are saying too, that lady is able to manage on her own without you. And so when she has the next baby and the daddy decides to go on Lyme and we quarrel, really, we are reaping what we planted. Because we said to him, you are not important, you're not valuable, she can manage on her own.
Yeah.
So we blame men, but we have created the men who we have. And let me say, not all men. Not all men are what people would say they are, what people would think they are. We have wonderful men in this society. So the idea about man bad and man this, that, that's not the idea I carry at all. I'm saying that there's some whom are truly terribly impacted by the way we've brought them up, and there's some who have been able to fight their way out of that kind of.
Yes, yeah. And Dr. Ward, when you add complications to pregnancy, right?
Yeah. Mm,
Because some have a difficult delivery process, you
yes.
have C-sections, you have tearings, and all of these things which require more care and more support,
Hmm.
right? And now I always consider, because I lived it, the stress that you put a father under, because he knows he needs to be there to support his wife
Hmm.
and his newborn. And
Yeah.
sometimes they already have other younger children in the family. But
Yeah.
he does not have the ability to do so. He also needs to go to work because they need the salary to live and survive. And so, while we acknowledge there have been some gracious employers, and we thank God for them, who have instituted on their own, without a mandate being there from the government, have put in place paternity leave in some measure, there are others who haven't. And so, men and fathers and families, because paternity leave is not a man issue, it's a family issue.
That's
It
right.
should not be at the beck and call of, I hope I have a good employer. The same way we have enshrined the protection of a pregnant mother in legislation. And there are penalties, Dr. Ward, if you tamper with that protection and that benefit of a mother. It is the same way we need to provide for men to preserve the family.
I
You know, there's,
strongly agree.
there's a report done in the UK. I believe the doctor's name is Ben Klein. Forgive me if I mess up your name. But he did a report on family breakdown in society, a research paper on that. And one of the things he discovered, Dr. Ward, is that um, most couples could pinpoint that the time their relationship started to fracture was during pregnancy and post pregnancy because of the strain that is placed on the family at that point in time. Right? The woman is going through so many physical changes that you could describe, Dr. Ward, and emotional changes as well. Right? The father is there to support, and as I said, also has to carry everything else simultaneously at the same time.
Yeah.
How are we providing for that? And when we and the thing is, Dr. Ward, paternity leave or shared parental leave, because there are countries who've now graduated to that, it is not something that is new in us in the global context. There are countries such as Canada, right up in North America, there who have 1 year shared parental leave. The both parents work out how they share the 1 year to provide support for each other and the child during that time. Why are we still battling in Trinidad to say, please value fathers? Why are we doing that in Trinidad today? Having to plead and say, please value fathers. So
We're
we
copying we're
go ahead.
copying some of the wrong things, eh? We
Yes.
like to look to North America, but there's some very good things happening out there that we need to take examples from.
Yep. Yeah.
Yes.
So that is one of the things we'll be delving into on the day. But Dr. Watt and I ran off with it because we're very passionate about that, right? Rondell always says, we say to men, step up, but we remove the rungs of the ladder for them to step on.
Yes, I'm thinking as you're talking. I'm thinking society thinks we need to fix men, but more than that, we need to fix men's issues, the issues they face.
Yes. Yep.
Yes.
And so culture, will be delving into culture, societal views. I had a father say to me recently, we were having a conversation about a newborn, and I said to him, how are you caring for the newborn? Oh my, Dr. Ward got dropped off. I hope she could come back on and get back on. But I was saying to him, Tianti, how are you caring for this newborn? And he said to me, The baby is too young, right? I can't do anything as yet. And him and I had a long chat about it. And at the end of the day, I realized his view or his value of himself as a father was rooted in a societal view of what a father was or is to a child at different stages of his life. So he did not believe, based on the societal view that was pressed into him and pressed into so many others, that at this stage of his child's life, because this is a newborn, he didn't believe that he could play an active part in raising this child. Physically, I mean, not just being there and sitting there, but actually doing the things that need to be done. And I know not all men think like that, right? I know there are many who have broken the mold, but there are many who are trapped in it because of how society views fathers. Now, I lost my train of thought there, but sorry, my phone rang. I hope it didn't disturb the program. The thing is, I've heard women say in my life career, I've heard women say, no man could change my girl child pampers, not even her father. And that I have always looked suspiciously at that, because at the end of the day, what are you saying? What is behind this? Is your husband? I've heard wives say this about their husbands, and it's not that they've suspected they're doing anything. It's not that they think that, no, there's something wrong with this man. No, it has nothing to do with that. Absolutely nothing. It has to do with a societal view of what a father is. That you would say, no man, not even my husband could change my girl child pampers. What is that? What exactly is that? As a society, what have we really said? Have we really encapsulated about our view of fathers in raising their children and parenting their children? And this has spilled into other things, as we know, false allegations, which is another real issue impacting men and fathers, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but across the globe. A serious issue, false allegations of sexual abuse of their children, right? False allegations of rape, false allegations of sexual harassment. And we are not saying sexual harassment, rape, and abuse doesn't happen. It happens, but so too does false allegations. And the thing is, when it has been determined, and we've seen it play out in our courts many times, we've seen it in the headlines, child admits granny told them to say, daddy interfered with me. Child admits on the witness stand, mommy told them to say, daddy interfered with me. And what becomes of it? A rebuke, and everybody goes their way. And the father is now left to pick up all the pieces. After being ostracized, Dr. Ward, from his community, from his family, after possibly losing his job, his reputation, he now has to pick up all the pieces. Dr. Ward, just when you got cut off there, I was talking about societal views of fathers.
Yes.
And I was giving the example of a conversation I was having with a father who had a newborn. And I was asking him, how are you? How is it going? And he said to me, the child is too young, right? The child is too young. And I said, what do you mean the child is too young? And he said, too young for me to do, change the pampers, to do this and to do that. And when we had a long conversation on it, and I realized his view was rooted in how society encapsulates fathers. And I also shared of mothers who have said to me, not because of any concern with their husband or boyfriend being a predator, but again, societal views, who have said to me, not even my husband could change my girl child pampers.
That's unfortunate, Shervon. And I'm wondering, what kind of relationship that would be between husband and wife. Because if you're my husband, the father of my child, then I would expect that you would share in the caring for that child. If I have any suspicion, then it means that you should not be my partner. You should not be my husband. You should not be my partner, full stop. We are falsely labeling men. And we are of the belief that only men perpetrate sexual offenses. Is it that what we're saying? Or we have had instances where women have been perpetrators, but somehow no one carries around that view that all women will commit some sexual offense. We have to face reality. Things happen, and when they happen, we are all hurt by those things. However, we should not falsely label men. How could you sleep with a partner who you believe will touch your baby? That's the father of the child. Both parents were responsible for bringing that child into the world. Both parents. Yes. And I'm sure that there are many women, besides the ones that believe that a man shouldn't touch their young child, there are many women who would welcome the assistance. I've seen it. I've seen men taking care of their children, their babies, male and female. We need to clean up our minds, We need to clean up our minds. We are not saying that things don't happen. We face reality. We are fair and frank. However, we need to clean up our minds. We can't be suspicious of every father. We cannot be. If we're suspicious of our partners, then that's not a good relationship. That relationship should not exist.
Yeah. And Dr. Ward, I tie that back to that, and it's not that old, it's a recent, right? Practice where when children were ill and had to be warded at the hospital, that men could not stay overnight with them. I had my own brother on this program a couple of months ago, and he was sharing his experience with that. I mean, my nephew is now 16 years old, so that was a while back, but 16 years ago in his example, but there were other examples after, where the hospital said to him, and he is a single father, he raised his son since birth, and the hospital is saying to him, no, you can't stay overnight with him. A woman has to stay overnight on the ward. And we were exploring that and saying, just as you asked the question, why is that? Is it that we believe a man will jump on a nurse in the night and just attack them? Is that what all men are going to do? Is that the thinking? And again, societal views of manhood and maleness and masculinity and fatherhood, that clearly there's a fear why we say, no, you can't spend the night on the ward here. There are only female nurses. That was the excuse given to him, who work in the night. But what does that have to do with me? I'm sitting by my child's bedside, right, taking care of him. Why does it have to be a woman who is on the ward?
And that view is extended to so many areas of life. If a man is falsely accused, that man is most likely to be convicted, charged, found guilty. And children and women use that view that we have of men to make false allegations. When a false allegation is made against a man, many people believe it has to be true. And if we follow comments on social media, when we see these things, we realize that it is skewed against the male. And people do not even wait for evidence before they arrive at a conclusion. And this is so unfair.
Mm-hmm.
If a woman is accused, the sympathy gathers on the side of the woman, and people begin to doubt and then throw accusations on the man and say maybe he used to do her X, Y, and Z, and that's why she did. There's justification. But justification should never replace fairness. Should never replace fairness. Our imaginations run wild when it's a man. When it's a woman, we believe that she's innocent. And if we want to build a better society, we cannot have that imbalance.
Yes.
We cannot have that imbalance. And I really know that on the 19th of November, these views are going to be expressed strongly. Because Shervon, your organization has evidence of false accusations. You know, I remember when Rondell was speaking out against a particular issue. I won't call her name now. And we met in Tobago and we were able to sit with him and discuss that particular issue and to provide some levels of support for him. And this was an issue of false accusation.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we have to stand up. We have to speak out.
Yeah.
We have to be fair. And I'm calling on women, my dear sisters, let us be fair. We cannot afford to continue on this road.
Thank you, Dr. Ward. Thank you for that call. You know, even we'll be discussing domestic violence on that day. Yes. Intimate partner violence. And you know, strangely, or interestingly, I should say, I saw a statement published today by the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. It was shared with me. I still have to go and verify it. But the headline is, Trinidad and Tobago must adopt urgent measures to prevent gender-based violence against women.
Oh.
It stops right there. Full stop. As if to say, Dr. Ward, that men are not victims of domestic violence. As if to say as well that the research has shown that the number of male victims of domestic violence is increasing at a faster rate than the rate of domestic violence against women. That's how quickly it's growing. Now, in other jurisdictions, there has been more sensitization towards men as victims. And this is why you are seeing more men coming forward and addressing the issues of domestic violence. Whereas in our society, it is still seen as an issue that is non-existent, despite what we see on social media, Dr. Ward.
You see, the men realize that the imbalance is against them. The scales are tipping against them. They're not coming forward if they know that when they go to the police station, they're going to be laughed at. They are not going to come forward if they know that when a report is made and the police officer comes, they're the ones who will end up in the handcuffs or whose head would be banged against. And I'm pulling this out of real stories that you know about. The head would be banged against the vehicle. And despite the fact that they have a visible physical disability, and it is clear that they're not able to abuse the woman, the police officers are going to believe the woman. So men will not speak up. They will not. And then I go back to the fact that we have taught them to hide their emotions, to buckle up everything inside, to not speak out, to not seek help. Because if you seek help or if you cry or you go to a police station to make a report, you're a weak person, you're not a man. And we call them all kinds of names, anti-man and some other more derogatory names. You see, we have the power to change what is existing here, you know. But first we have to face reality. First, we need to face reality. We have created some monsters. We have placed men in some negative positions. We have been labeling men unfairly. We have been accusing them wrongly. And we have been taking the sides of the woman. Now, I am saying, if you need to, if the situation warrants it, if you really need to, then yes, take the side of the woman, but be fair. gather all the information, and to our very hardworking law enforcement officers, evaluate the situation properly before you make a decision to arrest. Because sometimes it's the woman. Very often it's the woman. And we've heard Michael Stewart talk about a woman who made a call and she was screaming on the phone and bawling, and so the man was hitting her. And then when the police officers arrived, she had nothing on her body as evidence that she was being beaten. But she was doing that so that she would receive the sympathy of the law enforcement officers. That's unfair. That's unfair. If a relationship cannot work, leave it alone.
Yeah.
That's my advice.
Yeah. And you look at it in society, because I mean, just a few days ago there was a video posted on Facebook by a popular influencer, and you're seeing the man trying to walk away, Dr. Ward.
I saw that, yes.
Repeatedly.
Yes.
And you're seeing the woman harassing him, throwing his clothes on the ground. He trying to move with the clothes. She tip it over and make it fall on the ground. He tried to pick it up. And he demonstrated quite a lot of patience until he looked like he was about to lose it. And
Yes,
the end of the video.
okay. It was provocation.
It was provocation to the highest orders.
Yes.
It was. And again, when you look at the international statistics on the causes of domestic violence, right? There's a report that speaks about most of the domestic violence cases being reciprocal, Dr. Ward, which means both women and men are getting into physical confrontations.
Yes, they are.
Right?
Again, I want to advise my brothers out there: don't get drawn in, because very often you will be tempted, and the idea, the objective would be to get you to react negatively. Sometimes to be thrown out of your house. Mm-hmm. Sometimes to be arrested. I know that sometimes, it's not that. That's not the case. However, I am telling you to be very careful, because sometimes that is the objective. They want to trap you, get you drawn in, have you break the law, have you commit some serious offense. So if you find yourself in a position where you're being provoked, do not sit in it until you reach breaking point. Because when you reach breaking point, you will not be able to control yourselves.
Yeah. Prince, I want to thank you for joining us. Good afternoon to you too, Lenore. Always a pleasure having you. And Tasha, thank you for joining us. They are commenting online. Keep your comments coming in. For those of you just joining in the program, the Office of the Prime Minister and the Fathers Association, together with the Hope and Action Network, and is it BMEN, I believe, Dr. Ward?
Yes, BMEN.
We are coming together to host an International Men's Day retreat. And this is next week, Sunday, which is the 17th of November, God Spare Life, to the Tuesday, the 19th of November. And we're going through some of the things we'll be discussing on that day. As we said, it's an exciting time for men in Trinidad and Tobago. We have an opportunity with some key stakeholders in government, in civil society, within the judiciary, who we are sending invites to as well, to not just talk about issues, but talk about solutions to the issues, with the hope that we can have some actionable items that we can all work together on, so that we help men up, we restore men, the value of men and fatherhood and boys in this society, so that we can have a better society. Right? I have sons and I have a daughter. And so my daughter has to marry a man in time to come as she gets older. So me investing in men is to her benefit. So if you only have daughters, you investing in young men is to your benefit. Right? And if you have sons, well, it's straightforward from there. Right? If you have grandchildren, nieces, nephews, at the end of the day, they're going to have a partner. And so us investing in both men and women, boys and girls, is only going to benefit our society. And so, Dr. Ward, you were talking about, I want to turn, before we move on to some other topics that we're going to be discussing on that day, I want to also address how we as a society respond when we see these acts of violence, right? Because many times, like that same video we're discussing there, people are taping, they are seeing the provocation, they're laughing, they're
Mhm.
jeering it on, and when the man snaps though and resorts to violence, then you see everybody rushing, and I've seen that happen many times before. Oh, don't hit the woman, boy, don't hit the woman, what happened to you? But where was the intervention, or where is the intervention? Why isn't there an intervention, Dr. Ward, when we are seeing the man as being victimized?
That's the imbalance that we've been speaking about for the last hour. It unfortunately it exists in society. A man is a human being. If we start there, recognizing that a man is a human being, then we will help. And you see that cell phone and recording and posting on social media. Yes, we learn of some of the issues because of that. But before a person decides to record and post, think about the person who is in need of help. You as the bystander have a responsibility to assist.
Mm-hmm.
And the research says that the more people who are present, the less likely it is for someone to assist. That's called the bystander effect. So the larger the crowd, the less assistance is likely to occur. And that research has been conducted way back when, decades ago. And with the cell phones now being very popular and the live streaming and so on, things have gotten worse. If someone is being abused, provoked, step in, my people. Male, female, young, old, whoever is present, step in. Your intervention could save lives, could save property, could prevent a man or a woman from going to prison. Help. If it's a woman you're helping, you're more likely to help. Why? It's a human being. A man is a human being, and I keep repeating that. Maybe you've heard it too many times to the evening, the afternoon, but yes, help. Help. Don't encourage it. And sometimes, too, Shervon, we see people encouraging the woman, hit him, beat
Mm-hmm.
him, beat
Yeah,
him. That is not socially responsible. That is not social responsibility. It is a poor way to deal with issues like that.
yeah,
We are supposed to be about lifting each other up, about building and not breaking down, not about causing confusion, not encouraging abuse.
yeah,
If the man is abusing the woman, help. If the woman is abusing the man, help. Help.
yeah, yeah. Yes, definitely, definitely. And in solutions, as we were saying that we're looking at solutions, we want to explore on that day the situation in Spain, because Spain has been one of the territories to implement shared parenting as a part of its court system, its judicial system, and they have been studying the effects of shared parenting, Dr. Ward, on their society. And they've seen some really interesting things. One, they've seen that a decrease in their domestic violence cases by as much as 50%. That tells us that we have a powerful solution there.
Yes,
And
we do.
and that the correlation there, the connection there, is that by implementing shared parenting, they have eliminated the conflict and the fight, where one believes they have more power, the power dynamic, as we say, over the other.
Mhm. Mhm.
When we've leveled the playing field and the child is not a token for anybody to play with and take advantage of and to use as a bargaining chip, then conflict, you are able to shift a lot of the conflict out of the way,
Yes.
right?
Yes, and I imagine that there is full support for mother, father, and child in that situation.
Yes.
Because,
Yep.
as human beings, we encounter problems.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there might be little bumps along the way. But with support, things can go smoothly.
Yep.
So I want to encourage us, if we ever get to that point, and hopefully we will, that we have all the supports that are necessary and not simply implemented because we see it working in another place.
Yes.
These things work because they're structured properly and the
Correct.
supports are put in place.
And you made the comment earlier about sometimes we copy the wrong things from the international community.
Yes.
And these are some of the things we need to look at. How do we take and integrate those things into our systems? As you said, not just the terminology, but the structure that supports it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another key thing that they saw, Dr. Ward, is that juvenile delinquency decrease drastically. Again, because you now had productive parenting, if I can call it that, as opposed to, as I always reference, the King Solomon story of the cut the living child in two, which is oftentimes the type of parenting that happens when conflict is in the middle of a father and mother.
Yes.
So that the second panel, let me see, Kwesi, thanks for commenting. And Leno says some women provoke their men. The court system encourage that foolishness. Leno, I hear you. I hear you. And it's not just the court system. They also have to address that issue as well. But the society, as Dr. Ward and I was saying it, it's a societal issue. I was telling Rondell yesterday, I think it was yesterday or day before, Dr. Ward, that society mirrors, or everything is mirrored against our society. Our politicians come from society. Our judges and magistrates, police officers, etc., come from society. If we don't address the societal issues, then we can't have a rotten society and produce good fruit.
Indeed.
Kwesi says, Kwesi also goes, he says some magistrates are also biased and resentful towards giving custody to men. And Kwesi, we understand the sentiment, right? We've dealt with many men who have experienced that. And we as an association are advocating for not just custody for men, but for shared parenting, for parents to co-parent, right? Because removing the shifting the scale from one end to the other still leaves the problem in the middle, which is the way the child is pulled, right? And so we want to as a, not just as an organization, as a society, Dr. Ward spoke about the structures in place to help men and women, one, help relationships stay together, Dr. Ward. Yes. Address the separation syndrome that we're seeing happening. People jumping into and out of marriage like you're jumping into a pot of boiling water. Right? Yeah. We would like to heal and hopefully keep families together. But in the event, God forbid, that is not able to happen and people have to go to their separate ways and there are children involved, then you have the right tools to process this emotional separation, because that's what it is, emotional separation, to be able to co-parent.
Right. Reminds me of a session that we did, how to walk away and live. Because there are times that you have to walk away, but we don't want people walking away and hanging themselves, or walking away and heading back to the home to commit murder.
Yes.
So we have to, there's so much we have to teach. Yes, Shervon, and I really congratulate the Fathers Association. You all have so much energy. I wonder where you get all that energy from, but I
don't know how much energy we have again, Dr. Ward. I don't know.
Let's keep on fighting. Let's keep on fighting.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Ward. So panel 2 on that day, on the 19th, we're looking at shared parenting, child maintenance, paternity fraud. Dr. Ward, you and I were discussing this on your in your group 2 days ago. And we saw the statistics, how troubling it was, Dr. Ward. I think I told you all on the program that in reading and preparing myself for the discussion, I know it's an issue, but I had no idea as to the magnitude based on the stats. So how frequently this is happening on an international scale.
Yes. Wow. Do you want to share some statistics with the listeners? I was blown away by the 59%.
Let me pull it up while you are speaking, Dr. Ward.
Yes, and Shervon, it was really, really lovely of you, wonderful of you, kind of you to really share on that program on that evening. The participants are still blown away by the presentation. We thought, we know the song, your daddy ain't your daddy, but your daddy don't know. And this was a case of infidelity and a child being given the wrong father. And as we like to say in Trinidad and Tobago, give me a jacket. Or maybe in Tobago, they say it more than in Trinidad. But it is something that many men face in our country. It is an issue that many men face in other countries. And those of our listeners who look at paternity court would see that it is quite popular. Yes. Have you found the statistics now?
Yes, I have it here. So, based on a study done by the American Association of Blood Banks in 2003, 354,000 men took paternity tests, and 30% it was discovered they were not the father. Almost 1/3 of the fathers who were tested against their children, it was found that they were not the father. A later study done in the UK at some bioclinics, after 5,000 men and children were tested between 2014 and 2016, it was discovered that 48% of those 5,000 were not the fathers. Almost half of the men who were tested. And the other research went on to point out in England, 59% fell into this category. In Northern Ireland, 42%. Scotland, 39% of men who came to those labs. This was the bioclinics group. They were evaluating the results of all the DNA tests they had conducted over a 2-year period. And the numbers were ranging in the 30s to 50%, you could say. And we also pointed out on the program that right up there to our neighbors in Jamaica, because we haven't been studying that phenomenon in Trinidad, although we've been speaking about it, we haven't researched it to see how gross it is here. But right next door in Jamaica, I think the figure was somewhere 18-19%. And I pointed out there in the article in Jamaica that I think 16% of the women, they knew before they registered the child that this was definitely not the father of the child. So it wasn't even a situation of having multiple partners, and I'm not sure. They knew. In the research, they said they knew that that wasn't the father. So that is a heavy, heavy, heavy issue. And we spoke about some cases right here in Trinidad and Tobago. If you do a quick Google search, you will find it, where parents learned through the court that the fathers or men found out through the court that they were not the father of their children. So it is definitely, Dr. Ward, a serious issue that we need to look at.
Yes. And we spoke of the whole issue of DNA testing and finding out this information earlier. Because I've seen some men, the children are in their 20s or late teens, and that father would have used his resources. His emotion, not the money, because there was one man who was saying it's not about the money.
Yes, yeah.
It's not about the money. He was invested emotionally. He thought that this was his child.
And we walked through, Dr. Ward, on your program, how painful that has to be for a man and the child involved in that situation, and confusing and everything else.
Yes.
Because we spoke about how bonds are formed
That's
Even
right.
though a man doesn't carry a child in his stomach, he bonds with that child even
Before birth.
before birth.
Yes. Because I've heard mothers say that as soon as the daddy arrived and started to talk, the baby would get very quiet and
Mm-hmm.
would listen to the father's voice. Yes, because they hear.
Yeah,
They hear. So that bond is being formed even before birth.
yeah,
And then after birth, of course, every man is excited to know that he has an offspring.
yeah. And
And
so
then
then being ripped apart, Dr.
to be
Ward,
ripped apart. Yeah.
to hear that news. And Tasha is commenting here. Tasha is saying, she said, I could never understand how some women can knowingly deceive men like this. It undermines trust, can cause so much confusion and damage in children if this news comes out. She says
Yes.
it's important to equip men with the tools and skills to manage this situation if it ever happens. Tasha, I don't
Definitely.
know what tool and skill we could give a man to deal with that situation. I
He would
really
certainly
don't.
need support. But
Yes,
but before we get
needs.
to all of that, my sisters, ladies, let's do what is right. Let us do what is right. You have a doubt. It's better to have a DNA test done so that you could have the correct father, the correct man identified as the father of the child.
Yeah.
It's unfair to any man, and we've been talking about unfairness all evening. It's unfair to any man to be supporting a child, not only financially, but protecting that child, guarding. We know how men feel about their children, guarding that child, and then discover somewhere way down the road, that's not my baby. Your daddy ain't your daddy, but your daddy don't know. This is not something for women to feel good about. It's not something that we must feel we got away with. It's
Mm-hmm.
unfair. It's wrong.
I saw a commenter says here, when it comes to custody, should the lives of parents and children depend solely on the judgment of a sitting magistrate or judge? Are they, one, the best authority to make that decision? Can they in reality separate their personal feelings from what's in the best interest of the children? Also, history reveals that mothers have overwhelmingly been given custody of children, and now that has worked. And how has that worked out for children when it comes to incarceration, addiction, suicides, prostitution, runaways, etc.? I hear where you're going, um, and I want to say to you, and I want us to think about this carefully. When there are separation issues, the court doesn't come and involve itself in our families. We go to the court and
Mm.
we bring the court in. And so it's our inability to manage the conflict in our relationships that is giving room for the court to be in the middle, right? And yes, we want to address the way the court treats with cases. And yes, as an association, we have seen some improvement, but we are a long way away from where we need to be. But in the first instance, Dr. Ward, the issue isn't the court. In the first instance, it is us, man and woman, and our inability to address our issues is what is leading to us having to invite the court now to have a say and authority over us, right? And I know, gentlemen, don't get me wrong, I didn't choose to have to be separated from my daughter. I tried to be in her life through non-legal ways for many years. It didn't work out, and I had to go to the court eventually, Dr. Ward. But I'm saying if as a society and if as the family unit, and the family unit isn't just you and I, because there are in-laws and siblings and grandparents and all of these things are wrong, who to me, Dr. Ward, have a role in helping you resolve conflict as well. But
Yes.
sometimes what my experience has been is that these persons pour gas on an already roaring fire.
Yes, and it a lot of that has to do with honesty, you know. I cannot agree with a decision someone makes because the person is my daughter. I cannot agree with a decision someone makes because the person is my son or my cousin or my aunt or my friend. We have to remove ourselves, remove the relationship part of it, and reason fairly. I don't know how many times I've used that word for the evening, but it is important to this discussion. It is not right because it's my daughter. It is not right because it's my cousin or my son or my father or my brother. So we have to view things through a more balanced pair of lenses and provide the advice and support and encourage people to seek help. Because there are times when you can't resolve the issues on your own. You may have to seek the help of a professional, a pastor, an older relative. But of course, in all these cases and all these directions, we have to find people who we don't seek to influence by our own thoughts or our own views on the matter, but the people who are going to be very frank, very fair, will listen dispassionately, and are willing to help. At the same time, we have to be careful about people who don't care about your relationship and wish it would break up anyway. So we have to be wise as well. We have to have the wisdom of Solomon, and that wisdom that was exercised with the babies. We have to exercise that wisdom. Seek help when help is needed. Get the support that's needed. And for those who are asked to assist, we have to be fair and frank. We have to be honest. Remove ourselves and our feelings and view the situation for what it is.
Definitely.
Shervon and Dr. Wall, let me jump in and ask a question that I've been asked by some of my friends, male, most of them. Is DNA testing the only conclusive method of deciding or to come into a conclusion of who is the child's father? Or is there other methods?
The
Medical perspective.
the court recognizes DNA testing, so too does the law, David. So
And I think there's a 99.9% accuracy, Shervon.
yes, from a medical perspective, there's a 99.9% accuracy, yes. And then in terms of legislation, Mark, the legislation speaks to DNA testing. Now, what normally happens, Mark, if let's say there's a dispute and it goes through the court, after the court confirms the paternity, the court then directs an order by order to the registrar of births that the role, if we call it that, be amended to include the father of the child, who is confirmed to be the father of the child. And if it's a case where the wrong name was on the birth certificate, the DNA test confirms that this is not the father of the child who was on the birth certificate, then the same happens. They direct that it be removed from the birth certificate. Does that answer the question, Mark?
Yes, I thought a simple blood procedure would have proven that, like you just go for like a blood test, as we say.
Oh, no. The DNA test is the most accurate. DNA testing is the most accurate.
Thank you.
No problem at all. So the what were we discussing, Dr. Ward?
We were looking at the Tuesday, but some of the issues there are very interesting. So that's why we went off.
Right, paternity fraud. We were discussing paternity fraud, and so I saw Lenore says here they should be jailed. Women who do that, and Lenore, I support that 100%. I support that 100%. We say that this is a criminal offense, right? And you should face criminal charges
And
and
the man should be compensated.
Yes, yeah, it's a criminal offense. I agree, and in addition to making a false declaration, if I can call it that, because you would have gone to the registrar of births and said this is the father. In addition to making a false declaration, it is also emotional and psychological abuse, Dr. Ward.
Yes, it is.
Because that child is going to be damaged severely.
Yes.
So too that man is going to be damaged. We spoke about on your program a child who is of school age and whose friends are accustomed seeing daddy at the events, right? And the extracurricular activities and the school plays and the this and the that. And then all of a sudden, daddy is not there. How do you say to your friends, well, I found out
that no longer my daddy.
My daddy is no longer my daddy. That child is going to be scared.
Yeah.
Right? So that's going to be a heavy topic, I imagine, on the day, because at the end of it all, there needs to be a solution to that issue. Right? There needs to be a solution to that. I saw someone said, oh, Donald says in Canada, they have need to repay all the maintenance payments received, among other things. Yes, there should be compensation. But you know, I read out the article on Dr. Ward's program recently of that father in Trinidad, and the magistrate asked him, what about the money you paid? Basically to say to him, what you want to do? What you want to do with the money you paid? And he said in tears, the article says, it's not about the money.
The money.
Which is to say, there is no amount of money you could give him back will compensate him for the pain and anguish he has to live with for the rest of his life. Because this man discovered that his 2 children out of his relationship were not his. Not just one, but his 2 children were not his. So it's definitely a serious issue and needs to be treated. And again, Dr. Ward, I am not tired of you hearing me say the word fear. In fact, the more you speak, I'm connecting everything we've been advocating over the years to that point about being fair. Right? And definitely last but not least, because we just have about 13 minutes left, Dr. Ward, 1-3. The healthy man is the last panel discussion on the day. And we will be looking at male suicide. And Dr. Ward, the state of suicide among males in Trinidad and Tobago, it is frightening to say the least.
Yes, it is. Mr. Fields presented on that on my program. Yes, and we were left shaken.
Yeah, it's frightening. I don't have the most recent stats at my fingertips, but I can tell you some of the older stats that I have. And when I say older, 2019 to 2021. In 2019 to 2021, 2019 we had 92 suicides, 2020 104, 2021 128, and 79.8% of the total of those suicides were men. 80% basically. And the age ranges sometimes, this is in 2021, for men, the age ranges were from 9 years old, Dr. Ward, to 60. Not 19,
9
not
years.
20, 9 years old for men and boys. And for women and girls, every life loss is tragic. For women and girls, it was 26 to 60 in 2021, age 26 to 60. So men and boys were committing suicide from the age of 9 years old. And it seems like every week we open the papers or social media, Dr. Ward, we hear of a man taking his life. And so we want to delve into the issues that are driving men at such a rapid rate in our society to commit suicide. And again, this is not a male issue, as I've been stressing all along. There's an article just last week, one of our daily papers, where a wife is on the news and she is completely lost because her husband took his life, and he was her rock, as she was explaining. He was her support, and she is now distraught that she has to navigate the already difficult challenges she was having because she was very ill. She has a lot of health challenges. And he was the person carrying the burden of life on his back for his family. And so it is not a man issue, because if you have a son, if you have a son-in-law, if you have a grandson, if you have a nephew, I want you to look at them carefully tonight. Listen to the stats I put out there. 80%, which is 8 out of 10. Look at the males in your home and realize that they are at risk population for suicides. Dr. Ward, on our radio program last week, we spoke about a case in the United States where a very young man, I think he was 15 years old, took his life after having a relationship with an AI. With artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
He had a relationship, hear me out, Trinidad and Tobago and the region, international. He had a relationship with an AI character. And this AI character, which is supposed to be a game, which is supposed to be just something to play with, I don't know what happened to this program. And this is not no small company, by the way. You go read it, go look it up. I think we posted it on our page as well, because there's a lawsuit now involving huge companies, Google being one of them, right? This AI said to him, take your life and come and join me in the virtual world. We also have Dr. Ward, which I shared on a number of programs, young men which it hasn't hit home here as yet, thankfully, but a number of young men in the US who also took their lives after being baited to share nude pictures of themselves.
Yes.
And then being what they call sextortion, and sex shamed because of the nude pictures they shared, and took their lives as a result. So boys and men, the emotional health of men, Dr. Ward, the role, Dr. Ward, and I want to hand this over to you to speak to, the role of women in building and preserving the healthy man.
Okay. As women, there is nothing that could disconnect us from the males. We are here because a man fathered us. Many of us have sons. We have siblings who are male. We have male relatives. And more than ever, we are needed to support men. First of all, we have to treat them well. We have to teach our young men, because let's face it, the fathers are generally out at work. The mothers spend much time with the children. We have to teach our young men that they have emotions. To start with, all the emotions that the females possess, the men possess them too. But in the males, they are suppressed because of the way we bring them up. We have to teach them to recognize their emotions and to use their emotions appropriately. Yes. If it's time to be sad, it's time to be sad. If it's time to be happy, it is time to be happy. There's nothing wrong with showing that you're surprised or that you're disappointed. There's nothing wrong with showing that you're angry. It is unhealthy to suppress emotions, and we need to teach our children that. And I teach a course at one of the tertiary institutions, social skills and adaptive skills. And among the social skills that we teach to persons with disabilities is recognizing emotions in yourself and in other people, and responding appropriately to your emotions. And as I said, we let them express their emotions. However, it's important for them to understand what emotions they are expressing. It's important to know what happens to their bodies when they are experiencing particular types of emotions. And I have my students get in front of a mirror and express at least 16 different emotions and take a picture of yourself so that you see what happens to your body. It helps you to understand. So when you see another person looking like that, you know that person is expressing a particular type of emotion. Feel and understand and read what's happening inside of you when you are experiencing that emotion. It is emotional intelligence, and it is as important as mathematical intelligence and bodily whatever and interpersonal and it is important. It's a very important part of us. In fact, the emotions are strongly connected to learning and getting along with people. And so we cannot afford to stifle the emotions of our young men. They have to be able to express it. Because if they stifle it, it's going to bubble up in some other place in a negative way. So we have to ensure that we teach them to recognize the emotions and those of others and to respond appropriately to what is happening with them and with the other person. Because in emotional intelligence goes both ways. It's not about you knowing that you are feeling this way, but it's about understanding the other person is feeling a particular way and responding appropriately to that person, supporting them as they experience the emotions. Their negative emotions and positive emotions, that's the reality. It is the reality. But managing them is what is very, very important. And really, let's hear it for the boys. Let's hear it for the boys. We want them to be the men who we want our daughters to get married to. We want our husbands to be the dream husbands that we had. But we are not preparing many of our young men to become what they ought to be. We are not doing that. We're expecting them to grow up to be good girls. And I make no excuses for saying that. We teach them like girls. We want them to behave like girls. We stop them. And when their brains are saying, run, go out in the field and run, or tear that car apart to see how it's made, we're saying, no, don't do that. Yeah, all of that is education. All of that is faulty education because it is trying to twist the mind of a man into the mind of a woman. And the results are not what we want. Therefore, in everything that we do, we have to ensure that we educate our boys properly. We educate them appropriately. And you didn't talk about the awards, so I want to tread back to you.
Yes. At the end of that day, we're going to have some awards for some special persons who have been contributing to society in different forums, right? And we really want to recognize them because, many times I say to persons all the time, we look at movie stars and we look at entertainers and we look at them as the standard to which we must align ourselves to. But there are men and women who are plowing the fields, if I can use that examples, who are sacrificing their time, their resources, and everything towards building a better society. Rodney, thank you for that. Rodney says, Dr. Ward, and this is for you. He says, you see how a female point of view is important. Thank you, Rodney. Yes.
Thank you.
As we're about to wrap up, Dr. Ward, we just have 2 more minutes. Any closing remarks from you?
Yes. First of all, I want to say, men, we love you. We love you. And I wish that we understand better how to express that to you. I also want to apologize for some of the wrongs that we have done. And I want to assure you that we'll continue to work to try to change things, to turn things around. I also want to invite you all, if you can't attend the retreat in person, to log on because you will receive all the information. So look out for it. Look out for it. And join in. Join in and let's really discuss. Let's tear this thing apart. We want a better society and we have to empower everyone. I also want to let you know that there is a song that was composed last year by a young lady from Anguilla, and that song will be played throughout the retreat. The singer is a Tobagonian. It says, I have a voice. I have a voice. Men, you have a voice. Do not be silenced. Do not be silenced. You have a voice. Young men, you have a voice. You have been contributing to society, and we look forward to you contributing even more. We have that faith in you, and I will continue to encourage my women who I deal with at Hope and Action Network to do right by you.
Thank you, Dr. Ward, and thank you to the Hope and Action Network for being here with us, not just on this program today, but throughout this process of planning this very important initiative. And for those who came on late, we are joining with the Office of the Prime Minister to host an International Men's Day retreat in the coming days. It's going to run from November 17th to the 19th. On November 17th, we're going to have a march. On November 18th, it's going to be dedicated towards youth empowerment. On November 19th, the men are going to have some heavy conversations with some key stakeholders in society, government, the judiciary, and private sector, and so on, where we not just flesh out issues or we don't just bang the issue drum, but the hope out of this conference is to come up with actionable solutions, actionable items that we can take and begin to implement with the goal of building stronger men and building stronger women and building a better society. Mark, thanks as always to you and the Power 102 team for creating this space for fathers. Thanks for all the listeners today. Thanks for your comments. And we will be communicating the details of this event in the coming days. Mark, over to you.
Thank you so much, Shervon, and of course, Dr. Ward. It's been fantastic information shared, and I look forward to hearing what's the outcome of that retreat, as you call it.
Thanks, Mark. Have a good evening. Have a good weekend, all. Be safe.
Have a good evening, everybody.
Okay, I want to share the same sentiments to you. That's it for today's edition of Hard Talk right here at Power 102 Digital, where the Fathers Association of Trinidad and Tobago, they always are here to host Hard Talk on a Friday.